Hey everyone, welcome to my channel or welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about my all-time favorite books that I've read in 2021. So the day that I'm filming this is December 23rd, and I'm still reading a couple more books before the end of the year. So hopefully none of them, it would be a good thing if they are one of my all-time favorite reads in 2021 as well, but hopefully they're not since I'm still filming this video. Anywhoosies, let's just get on with it. So I have a shelf on my Goodreads account, which I'll link down below, and these are my favorite reads in 2021, and there's 16 books that I'm going to be talking about today. So the first book that I really enjoyed this year and is one of my favorite reads so far is The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. This was the first book I read in 2021, so I would say it was a great book to pick up to be my first read. I'm not going to talk about too much about this book because literally everyone knows what this book is about, but this book hooked me from the beginning and kept me hooked throughout the entire thing. After I finished it, I gave it to my mom so she could read it, and she absolutely loved it as well. This is one of those books where I feel like you either love it or you hate it. There's really no in between. For me personally, I loved it, as I mentioned, and if you have not read this book yet, I highly recommend reading it because it's super good. The next book that I really enjoyed this year was Where the Crawdads Sing. I'm really excited for the movie, which comes out on June 24th of 2022, I believe. This book starts out pretty slow because the first 70-ish pages are character building, so if you're not into that, then I don't think that you'll like this book. But if you can get past the character building and really fall in love with the characters, then this is the book for you. This book follows Kaya, and she is pretty much discriminated against, I guess you could say. People think she's gross and she's very poor. They call her the Marsh Girl, and there's a lot that goes into this book. Someone's murdered. They think she did it because of her background, yada yada. Really good book though, and I highly recommend everyone read this. And if you're getting bored, please read until at least 70 pages. Get past the character building. It's phenomenal. The next book is The Guest List by Lucy Foley. This book is also Reese Witherspoon's book club pick. So was Where the Crawdads Sing, which is part of the reason why I always wanted to read the books that she picked, but then recently I've been not enjoying the books that she's picked, so I haven't read a couple. I haven't read the ones the past couple months. So anyways, this book takes place on an island. This couple, Jules and Will, are getting married. They choose to get married on a secluded island, and there's a lot that goes into it. There's a couple different perspectives, but someone dies. We don't know who and we don't know why. Obviously it's revealed at the end, but it's definitely one of those thrillers where it's very suspenseful, it's very mysterious, and you can't put it down. You just want to know what happens, so you keep reading it. So good book. The next book that I absolutely enjoyed this year is The Dating Plan by Sarah Desai. This book was so freaking cute. This is the book that made me want to start reading more romances because I started this year out reading just contemporary fiction and thrillers, and so I picked this book up and absolutely adored it. This book follows Daisy and Liam, and they are fake fiancés, and obviously they fall in love, hence the romance, but it's just a really good book. And Daisy's a software engineer, which is like a badass job for a woman, so I really enjoyed this book. And the cover is beautiful. If you have not read this yet, I highly recommend reading it, obviously, because it's one of my favorite reads in 2021. My next favorite reads in 2021 are these two books. This is a trilogy, but the first two are definitely my favorite. I've recently read these, so I talked about them in my November wrap up. I'm pretty sure I read these last month. Anywho's, these really good books, and I'm not usually one to read YA, let alone love it, but I wanted to see what all the fuss was about with this trilogy, and man, oh man, I loved it so much. This book follows Pippa, and okay, we'll start with this one. This book follows Pippa, and she is a high school senior, and she has to do, I believe it's called a capstone, in order to graduate. And so she chooses the murder of a student of 2 students 5 years prior, I cannot remember. And she ends up solving it, which no one expected her to, and it was just it was a really good book. Also, with the way that this book is written, because some of them are like recordings and podcasts, and it's just one of those books where if you're able to get your hands on the audiobook and listen to it as you follow along with the book, I highly recommend doing that. This book, as mentioned in my November wrap-up, made me cry. I have no idea why on earth it made me cry. I mean, I do, because of the part that made me cry. This book, a classmate's brother is missing, and she does everything she can to try to locate him. So this one takes place at the beginning of her senior year, and this book takes place, I think, in like March or April of her senior year, and then the third book takes place when she's graduated, fresh out of high school. My next favorite read in 2021 was The Last Time I Lied by Raelee Sager. I've talked about this book, obviously, in the wrap-up of when I read it, which I'm pretty sure was July. And then I also talked about this being my favorite Raelee Sager book in my ranking and reviewing Raelee Sager. But this book follows Emma. And 15 years prior, she was at a summer camp called Camp Nightingale, and there was her and 3 other girls in her cabin, and they went missing and were never found, never heard from. Nobody knows what happened. So because of that, the camp got shut down. Then fast forward 15 years, she gets called back because they're reopening the camp, and she gets called back to be a camp counselor. And because she's a camp counselor, she gets to choose which cabin she wants to stay in, and she picks the Dogwood, which is the one that she stayed in 15 years prior. And then she's put in there with 3 campers, and those 3 campers also go missing. And it's a whole big thing, and it's really good. Couldn't put it down, read it really fast. So if you have not read this, or you're trying to figure out which Raelee Sager book to start your Raelee Sager journey, this one. My next all-time favorite read in 2021 was Every Last Fear by Alex Finlay. This book was a book that I tried to read every second of every day, because when I wasn't reading it, I was thinking about it, and when I was reading it, I couldn't put it down. This book follows a family. They go on a trip. Not the entire family. The one student who does, or the one family member that doesn't go, is a student at NYU and can't, I don't remember why he doesn't go on spring break with them, if he has too much schoolwork or if he just, I don't remember why. Regardless, his family, when they took their spring break trip to Mexico, they die. And the student that doesn't go is named Matt, and he is so shook and can't figure out why his family died or was murdered or whatever. And so we spend the book trying to figure out what happens. As mentioned with all the books that I've already mentioned, hooked me from the start, kept me hooked throughout, and read it really fast. So definitely recommend reading this one. I've heard a lot of people say that it's very problematic and makes Mexico seem gross. Really good book. I don't think it's problematic. So if you can get past that, definitely give it a chance. The next book I'm going to be talking about is The Four Winds by Kristen Hanna. Obviously, this book is going to be mentioned. Everyone loves this book that I know. So I'm in a couple different book groups on Facebook, and anyone who picks this book up, they always say, oh, I started The Four Winds by Kristen Hanna and it's so sad. Does it get any better? The answer is no, and that's because it's literally supposed to be a sad book. It's very eye-opening and teaches you a lot about the Dust Bowls that take place in Texas, and it also takes place during the Great Depression in the 20s. And it's not supposed to be a happy book. It's not supposed to have a happy ending. That's literally the point of the story. So if you're able to get past that, I definitely recommend reading this book if you haven't already. I freaking bawled my eyes out for hours on end after I finished this book because I was just so freaking devastated. But also after finishing it, it made me so grateful for everything that I have. And I learned so much about just history in itself, because I never really liked history in high school. They never made it fun for me to learn. And so because of that, I just wasn't really interested in history. I mean, I didn't have like a terrible grade in history, but I didn't have the best grade in history because I just couldn't stay focused because it bored me. So reading historical fiction It's definitely something that I love doing now because it makes learning about past events and things that happen, even though it's fiction, it still happened in history. So whether the story you're actually reading is true, you still get things put into perspective for you on how things actually were during that specific event. Same with The Nightingale. That was a really good book as well. It taught me more about World War II and the Holocaust and all that, which granted, I'm very fascinated with World War II and the Holocaust in general. Like I watched The Pianist, I watched Schindler's List. So things like that, when I'm reading about it and I know the people I'm reading about aren't real people, it makes it a bit easier to learn about when you're reading about devastating events. I read The Boy in the Striped Pajamas as well. So this was just one of those books that I feel like everyone needs to read in their lifetime to really know what happened in that time in history. And this is going to be a book that I keep forever. For one, it's a beautiful cover, and for two, it's just a book that's good to have to reread every couple years to learn more than you knew the first time you read it or the second time you read it, so on and so forth. So because of that, I'm going to be keeping this book forever. When my husband was in Korea, he told me that he wanted me to send him a book because I'm always talking books. I'm always reading books. I'm always going to the bookstores. I'm always buying books on Amazon. And I really want him to be able to experience reading how I do. It's a nice escape. It's fun. It's relaxing. And while he was in Korea, it was pretty much the only time that he was going to be able to read. So he told me to send him a book. And this was the book that I was going to send him. Plans ended up changing and he came home early, but regardless, this was the book I was going to send him, and I knew that he would have loved it because he's a big history fanatic. So definitely pick up this book. Also, if you're not aware, it won the Book of the Month, Book of the Year award, which is awesome because this book deserves all the awards. It didn't win the historical fiction Goodreads award, which shocked me that Malibu Rising won, and I didn't really consider that in historical fiction. Anyways, this book won Book of the Year for the Book of the Month Club. So really, really fascinating and good book to read. Everyone needs to read this book. My next all-time favorite read in 2021 was Survive the Night by Raelee Sager. I have seen this book on quite a few people's most disappointing reads in 2021, which is honestly very shocking. But if you think about it, if you're like a huge Raelee Sager fan and you've read all of his books and then you read his newest release that came out earlier this year, then I could understand that. However, this was the first Raelee Sager book I read and I really enjoyed it. So I think it's different if you've read all of his books and then you read this one versus starting with this one and then reading all the others. But this book I really, really enjoyed. I thought it was really great. The last chapter, I guess, or the prologue that's in italics was my absolute favorite part of this book, and I loved it. And everyone needs to read this book. It's a great Raelee Sager book. The next book that I read in the year 2021 that I absolutely loved was The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. This book is so hyped, and so I was a little nervous going into it because of all the hype. I'm usually very disappointed when I read super hyped up books. This book was so freaking cute. I loved it. They describe it as a rom-com. Make you laugh, it'll make you cry, you love it. I didn't necessarily laugh, but it was really cute and I read it really quick. I'm pretty sure I read it in like 1 or 2 days. I can't remember. I was up super, super late reading this book because I told myself I was going to stop when I got to a certain page. I got to that page and saw that I only had like 75-ish pages left, and I was like, okay, I might as well just read the whole thing. So I stayed up till like 1 a.m. reading it, and I loved it. This book follows a fake married couple. It follows Olive and Ethan. Olive's sister Amy is getting married to Ethan's brother. Cannot remember his name. I'm not seeing it on the back. Anyways, Amy is one of those people who tries to save a lot of money or try to find the best deals. So because of that, she found this like buffet style seafood catering, I guess. I'm not really sure. Anyways, Ethan is one of those stuck up guys who doesn't eat out of buffets because he says it's gross, and Olive has a shellfish allergy, so she ends up eating something else. Because of that, everyone that ate the buffet food got food poisoning, and nobody felt better. Like, it was really severe food poisoning, and Amy got like a really good deal, non-refundable honeymoon, and she couldn't go on it. So she sends Olive, and the groom sends his brother Ethan. They hate each other, by the way, which this is a hate to love romance, which is my favorite trope ever. And they go on this honeymoon, they pretend that they're the bride and groom, and they end up falling in love, and I loved it. So freaking cute. 100% recommend reading this book if you haven't already. Whenever people in the book groups that I'm in on Facebook ask for a fun, lighthearted read on vacation, or like they're going to the beach and they just want like a fun, cute book, I always recommend The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. The next books I'm going to talk about are my fave, Colleen Hoover. We have It Ends With Us, we have Ugly Love, and we have November 9. These books were all super cute. I loved all of them in their own unique way. This one made me cry. This one made me cry. These two made me freaking bawl my eyes out. This one is not as sad as these two, but this one's still sad and very heartwarming, as well as these two. So I'm not going to talk about what these books are about because literally everyone knows. These are like the 3 most popular Colleen Hoover books that are all over TikTok right now. I don't have TikTok, but I know that these are all over TikTok. Same with Verity. So I'm not going to talk about these books and what they're about. I read them all in 2021 and enjoyed them very much. The next book I read in 2021 and very much enjoyed it was Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. This book I read in October and I read it very fast. It had so many plot twists, so many unpredictable plot twists. I actually saw someone in a book group I'm in on Facebook post that she started this book and was very bored and asked if it got any better. I commented and I was like, you're bored of it and find it repetitive? I was like, I was hooked from the first page. And a lot of people liked my comment because they agreed with me and they thought this chick was crazy because she didn't enjoy it and said it was boring. But we're all allowed to have our own opinions. We're all entitled to our own wrong opinions. But this book was really freaking good. It's a short read, so it's very fast paced, and it was just so good. She has a new book coming out next year and I'm freaking excited for it. I talked about it in my 2022 anticipated releases coming out in 2022. So I'll link that somewhere up here and I'll link it down below as well for you to watch if you're interested in seeing all the books I'm excited for in 2022. But she also has a book titled Sometimes I Lie, which I have coming in the mail. Hopefully it's being delivered before I move because that would suck if it came after I had moved 2,000 miles away. So, and the last book I'm going to be talking about is It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. This book is 385 pages long. I started it in the morning and finished it at night. So that's how much I loved it. I read this book this month in December, so I haven't talked about it yet, so I'll talk about it more in my wrap up, but just know that I loved this book. It's my favorite read of all time in 2021 so far. I'm really excited for the second book, and yeah, I'm not going to go into too much detail about what this book is about because I'm going to talk about it in my December wrap up, but I just freaking love this book. It was so steamy, so smutty, so cute. I loved it. So, and that is all the books that I absolutely adored in 2021. So thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like this video, leave me a comment down below letting me know what your favorite 2021 reads were. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on post notifications to be notified every time I upload. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.